We're just going to jump in with a confessional. Is that okay? I have been thinking a lot about my relationship. It sounds weird to even say my relationship with alcohol. I've been thinking a lot about drinking. Should I drink? Should I not drink? Is it bad if I'm drinking? And I feel like I have a split personality because I literally argue for it and against it every single time I use it. I don't know why I'm so conflicted about it. Help me. Help all of us. Hey, it's your friend Mel, and welcome to the Mel Robbins podcast. Okay, I'm so glad you're here today because today is one of those conversations where I need you to put your arm around me. You know how I always say that the Mel Robbins podcast is like you and I going on a walk together and sorting out life and all kinds of topics together? Well, today I want to talk about something that's been on my mind for a long time, and that is my relationship with alcohol. And if I'm being honest, I've resisted having this conversation on the podcast because I'm not ready to remove alcohol from my life entirely, but I am so conflicted about drinking. I know it's bad for my health. I have so many other healthy habits, and yet I still love to have a cocktail. I still love to have a glass of wine. And maybe it's because Chris doesn't really drink that much, and so I often am confronted with, do I have a glass of wine alone? Do I not? And this isn't just a conversation about alcohol. You may not have any issue with alcohol. You may be sober. You may not really drink at all. You may be able to have one beer or one glass of wine and never think about it. But you probably have something else in your life that you're conflicted about. Maybe it's how much money you spend. Maybe it's an addiction to sugar. Maybe you play way too many video games or you spend too much time scrolling on social media. You know it's a problem, or maybe you wonder if it's a problem. And you keep going back and forth. I should stop, but I don't stop. Should I stop? I don't know. What should I do? Well, a friend of mine told me about this incredible woman named Rachel Hart. Rachel is a podcaster, and she is an expert at helping people understand their urges and create healthier and normal relationships with the things in life that you crave. Her work focuses on creating, quote, a normal relationship with alcohol, whatever that might mean for you. But everything that we're going to talk about today is going to help you take control of any area of your life where you feel this conflict or you feel out of control or you wonder if you have a problem and you just can't seem to get to the bottom of it. Here we go. Put your arm around me because this is going to be one of those episodes where I'm processing my feelings in real time live in our conversation as you and I are walking and talking. So let's do this. Rachel, welcome to the Mel Robbins podcast.
Thank you.
I'm really excited to talk to you because I have been thinking a lot about my relationship. It sounds weird to even say my relationship with alcohol. I've been thinking a lot about drinking, and I have this very conflicted relationship with drinking. My husband doesn't really drink, and so that means that I, have a partner that is never pouring himself a drink at the end of the day. And that has made me think a lot more about why am I drinking? And I've noticed that we're just going to jump in with a confessional. Is that okay? I mean, is this the way that we should start this thing? Okay, great. I've just noticed that I have a lot of agita about it. Should I drink? Should I not drink? Is it bad if I'm drinking? And I wanted to talk to you because I love your website and I love your approach to having people, as you say, have a, quote, normal relationship with alcohol and with their urges. And I don't even know where to begin. I just am really excited to talk to you about this because I don't even know. I don't know why I'm so conflicted about it. I wish I weren't. And I guess the other thing that's been happening for me is that the more that I learn about neuroscience and the body and the fact that alcohol is poison, the more I'm thinking to myself, why the fuck am I drinking if it's this bad for me? Oh, yeah, I know, because I like the taste of it. And every once in a while, it's fun to celebrate with friends. So that's me. That's me, the hot mess, Mel Robbins, with alcohol.
Or maybe not a hot mess.
A little bit.
Maybe normal to be conflicted.
Is it normal to be conflicted about alcohol?
Yes. Yes, of course it is. Of course. Well, because think about it. On the one hand, you're like, okay, I'm like learning about this and it's a poison and it's bad for my body. And on the other hand, it's like $1 billion industry, and we're exposed to so many messages about alcohol. And I just think we're getting all these conflicted messages all the time, that it's the thing, that makes things fun and fancy and adult, and how you do something special. And then at the same time, it's like, oh, by the way, you're poisoning yourself. So I think that that's very normal. And I just want to tell you that I think the vast majority of people that I work with start out in this place of, I'm not really sure what I want to do. I'm not really sure, you know, what is right. I just know that I have this kind of, I don't know if it's an intuition or this little kind of quiet whisper that, like, I don't know, something doesn't feel right, or something about my relationship feels a little off. And maybe I want to do something about it. It's just that this is also such a highly charged issue, right? And so I think a lot of times people have that intuition, they have that kind of inner knowing of, like, I don't know, maybe I want to look more closely at this, but then, like, oh God, what does that mean? Do I have to stop drinking for the rest of my life? Do I have to put a label on? So what you're experiencing, I just want to say, is very normal. The conflict that you have, for a long time, I was like, do I have a split personality? What is going on? Because part of me had so much desire and loved to drink. And part of me was also like, I don't know that this is creating the best outcomes for you. And I thought that conflict was a sign that something was wrong with me, rather than, you've got two different parts of your brain that care about different things. And so, you're going to be conflicted sometimes about your desires. That's normal.
Is it appropriate for me to tell you this soon in our relationship that I love you? Well, because I'm starting to think about how you're right. I've started to think about this like there's something wrong with me and I have a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when I look at everybody's relationship with alcohol, it is kind of fucked up because we have all of this messaging at us. Most of us have had periods of our lives where we drank. And I even look at our 20-somethings who are just through the college year or just got out of college, and their relationship with alcohol is crazy. Like they just go on these benders, and then it's like, oh, I'm not going to drink all week. I got to get back healthy again. And that's what I used to be like. And I think about how much effort goes into am I going to have a gin and tonic tonight, or am I not going to have anything at all? And then if I do have a drink, I should probably take some Advil before I go to bed. And the whole cycle that happens in the morning when you feel kind of hungover, and I wake up and I'm like, why did I do that? Now I'm not as clear and I don't feel like exercising. And I probably shouldn't have had that wine, and it tasted like shit anyway. And it was a lot of sugar. And so I realized that there's a lot of active energy that I have around alcohol. And I wanted to talk to you because I'm like, I'm pretty sure I don't have a problem. But what I do have a problem with is the amount of conflict that I feel like I'm doing something wrong. And I feel like I have a split personality because I literally argue for it and against it every single time I use it, where I'm like, well, it's just a gin and tonic, for God's sakes. I mean, it's just like, who cares? And then I'm like, well, the poison, and, you said you weren't going to drink tonight, so you're a liar, and that means you have a problem. And then I'm like, well, no, I don't, because I'm just having a gin and tonic, for God's sakes, and then I fill it up with Topo Chico after that, not the alcoholic Topo Chico, but just the regular one. So what's wrong with that? Well, you said you weren't going to drink, and then that's this, and then you're going to sleep like shit because you're in menopause, and like it's like this beat down. So help me. Well, help all of us. How did you start doing this? Like, what do you drink? I have so many questions.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so, I will say that I started drinking in college. I was 17.
Oh,
and
that's late. I'm a way better drinker than you are. I started at 14, man.
I was very quickly like, oh, this is the solution to all my problems. Like, we don't have to feel awkward. We don't have to feel anxious. I don't have to listen to any of my internal critic or any of my, hangups. This is amazing. Where has this been? Right. And so I think that was my experience, what you're describing, the kind of 20 something that I like would work very hard during the week. By the way, also during the week, a constant kind of P.S. Don't ever make any mistakes. Don't do anything wrong. You must do everything perfectly. And then the weekend for me was my outlet to be like, okay, like finally, not only do I get to stop feeling anxious and awkward and have these hangups, but also I can like be a little wild and mess up. And this is a way to feel sexy and confident and have fun. And so, that was something that my brain was learning. And again, I think it's really important to reiterate that we are learning something when we drink. The brain is always learning. So we're not just learning to acquire the taste. We're learning about, hey, this is what we do at sporting, when we watch the game or at sporting events or at celebrations or on vacation. So we're learning both when we do it, and we're also learning, this is how I relax. Right? This is how I connect. This is how I open up. And so all of that is unconsciously happening below the surface. And I think we get to this point where we start to want to examine our drinking, and maybe I want to drink less, or maybe I'm unsure about this. And we are trying to do it from this place of, okay, well, I know it's not good for me, right? I know I shouldn't do this, or I should be more responsible, as opposed to, hey, well, what has my brain learned? Right? Can I start to understand that? Can I start to teach my brain something different about what alcohol is a symbol for? I mean, it becomes a symbol for so many things. And I think we just look at it from the superficial of like, oh, I just like the taste, right? Or like, I was like, oh, I'm just into craft cocktails. That's just my thing.
I like the ceremony and the smoke and the sprig of rosemary that comes out of that thimble that they serve it in for $20, right?
Well, but right, there is so much. I mean, you think about it, you go to a fancy restaurant and you're getting the wine pairing and the sommelier is coming over, and you're getting all this information about, where it was grown and the type of grape. And yeah, I mean, we are like building up all of this kind of excitement and drama around it. And by the way, I'm not saying any of that is bad, but I think we just have to understand that like there's a reason that we attach all this kind of symbolism and desire and what it starts to represent. So that's all going on, and then we have the other side of, okay, well, if I had too much to drink, I was obviously stupid, and I should know better. And why am I still making these same mistakes? I should have grown out of this by now. So there's this idea that all of our desire and urges should just be conquered by our intellect. And that doesn't make any sense.
I just love everything that you're saying, because I'm starting to realize that one of the reasons why I've never been drawn toward just being a person that doesn't have alcohol in their life, period, is that it also felt, for me at least, I know for some people it's incredibly important and empowering, and it is the choice that is the right choice and the choice you need to make. But for me, there was something about it that felt like a part of the thing I'm already doing, which is making myself wrong about the urges. And I have always said to myself that I just wish I could be the kind of person that had no drama around it, that if I wanted a glass of wine, I had a glass of wine in the moment. And if I didn't feel the need to finish the whole bottle of wine, that I wouldn't have this whole shame cycle and conflict of whether or not I'm going to drink or not drink. And when you said the thing about how, like, it's part of how we watch sports, it made me realize there are so many stories that your brain has learned about when and where and why you drink alcohol. And I think the two biggest stories for me are, number one, that alcohol for me is about belonging,
Mm-hmm.
not belonging to the alcohol, but
Yep.
my brain has hardwired the moment that I first had a drink when I was 14 years old, and I was dating somebody who was 2 grades ahead of me. And at that point in time, I think it was still grandfathered in that if you were 18, you could buy alcohol in Michigan. And so
Mm-hmm.
my boyfriend could buy alcohol, or no, his friends could buy alcohol because he was 17. And we would go out to Lake Michigan. And I remember when we were first dating, we pull into the state park and there were all the seniors out there. And my boyfriend was a junior and I was a freshman. And I was so scared because I was the only freshman or sophomore that was out at that beach. The sun was setting. We get out of the car. He grabs my hand. We walk towards all his friends. And one of the gals turns to me and says, "Hey, Mel, would you like a rum and Coke?" And when she handed me that rum and Coke in a red Solo cup, I immediately exhaled and was like, okay, I'm part of the group.
Mm-hmm.
And so the trigger for me is anytime the waiter comes around or I'm going over to a friend's house. This just happened last night. I was not planning on having anything to drink last night. And then I went over to my friend's house. She had 2 glasses out and a bottle of Sancerre. And she poured 2 glasses and said, "Let's go walk around the garden." And I'm like, okay, okay, I'm going to join in with you. And it feels good to join in. And the Sancerre tasted great. And I had a glass of wine and that was that. And then I came home. But of course, as I'm driving home, Rachel, I'm like, why'd you do that?
Yeah. Right, because you're making it mean that you did something wrong.
Yes.
As opposed to like, can we just love your brain for a second? That it's like, hey, I want to belong. How normal of me, how human of me that I want to feel connected, right? And at some point, you're 14 and the brain's like, oh, this is how we belong. Like, you have the red Solo cup, I have the red Solo cup, look. Belonging. And so that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying, like, what was your brain learning? Right now, you may not have made consciously that connection in that moment, but at some point, your brain did make that connection. It did make that association. And so then it's like, wait, if this is a symbol of belonging and I want to belong, because who doesn't? Then what's going to happen all of a sudden? It's like, okay, so I go see my friend and she pours 2 drinks and I'm like, no, thank you. Are we disconnected now? Do I not belong?
And I know intellectually, Rachel, that she wouldn't give a shit. She'd just take my glass that she poured in hers and then give me a seltzer. Like she can roll with it. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
But this goes deeper than what you know intellectually. And that's why I'm so excited to talk to you, because the other piece of this for me is something that I only have recently discovered. And that is that having lived with undiagnosed ADHD for 47 years of my life and understanding now the role of dopamine and the fact that when you have undiagnosed and untreated ADHD, there is a huge deficiency in it, and your ability to basically switch between neural networks, that you unconsciously seek those dopamine dumps. One of them being the of having that first sip, right? And so I also see the correlation of the other moment that I really love to have a drink, which is after a really awesome, busy day at work. It's a celebration. And it is a lever because I work so hard that's like, oh, this is signaling to my brain that I can literally turn off the working brain and I can just shift down into, oh, it's time to relax and not think about work mode.
Well, it becomes a boundary, right? And so I talk about
a boundary.
A lot of
whoa, wait a minute. So wait. So a drink becomes a boundary? That is genius. Did you make that up?
I'm off the clock, right? This is my boundary. I have poured the drink. I am off the clock.
Oh my God, you're right.
And so then it's like, okay, so now I'm going to try to say no. I didn't understand that it was a boundary. So now my brain's like, okay, so we're still on the clock and I have to keep thinking, but I've been thinking all day long and I don't want to think about work anymore. This is my permission not to think.
I freaking love you. I feel like you are literally showing me a whole new world, because I have made it so much about the alcohol that I'm conflicted on the surface. And what you're trying to get us to see is, hold on a sec, drop deeper into what the where and when means and why you have the urge. Like it's almost as if you're saying, let's just remove alcohol from the conversation for a minute, and let's talk about this urge that you have and why there's such a conflict. Holy shit.
Yeah. And I just say, like, one of the thoughts for me for the longest time was just, I deserve it. Right?
Yes.
I deserve it.
I just said that
last night.
Last night. I literally was just like, I fucking work hard. I have no vices other than swearing and having, a cocktail.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously. Like, is it really coming to this, Mel? Really? Like, come on, woman. You do a lot of good in the world. You're a kind person. Occasionally you eat a Danish. I mean, you might hit the weed every once in a while, but that's organic. And come on. So you want a gin and tonic or a tequila on the rocks? Give yourself a fucking break. Like, literally, I deserve it.
Yeah. But it's like, what's the it and I deserve it?
The it, I guess, is it's turning my brain off. It's a reward. It's the boundary.
It's like permission to stop thinking about work.
Yes.
Pleasure.
Yes. Celebration.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much. I mean, there's so much insight and awareness if you're able to approach your urges as like a source of inner intelligence. Like, it's trying to communicate something to you, something that you're desiring, something that you need, something that you want that maybe has nothing to do with alcohol. But I think it's very difficult to get to that place when it's like, oh God, here's the urge again. Why do I have so many? Why won't they leave me alone? Do I have more than other people? Are they a sign that there's a problem? Why do I have a hard time saying no? We get so caught in this story that it's a sign that, something might be wrong with me. Maybe I have too much desire. Maybe this means something's wrong with my brain, as opposed to maybe this urge actually is kind of trying to tell me something useful. Maybe it's trying to tell me something about a deeper desire. Maybe it's trying to communicate, hey, what do I actually need? Maybe I need a boundary. Maybe I need to give myself permission. Maybe I need more belonging. Maybe I need more pleasure. But we can't get that information if the urge is always this thing that we hate and we wish would go away. And why do I have so many? And, why is it so hard for me?
Well, let's talk about urges, because you have so many tools. It is unbelievable. In fact, we're going to link to this, but you've got 12 different tools or steps to coaching the people that you work with to control their urges. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah. So I want to start with the word control, because I think a lot of times people come to this work and they think, oh yeah, controlling my urges would be, I can make them go away.
Oh, you can't?
Yeah. Well, unless you can get rid of your lower brain, we're not going to be able to make the urge go away. But notice how you're a little disappointed when I said that to you.
Yes, very.
Why are you disappointed?
Because it would be nice if I didn't have any urge, because then there would be no conflict, because I wouldn't be thinking about it.
Why?
I don't know. Well, for example, I don't ever have I used to eat Big Macs. Okay. No offense to McDonald's, but I used to love a Big Mac and an extra large fries. I would have the urge for it all the time. I haven't had the urge to eat a Big Mac in probably 2 decades. And I'm good with that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I actually would want to not have an urge for alcohol. Because right now I realize that urge signals that it's time to turn off my brain. It's time to do something fun. And so what you're basically saying, if I'm now reading between the lines, is that I think the urge is for alcohol. You're saying go a layer deeper.
Yeah. Saying what if it has useful information for you?
Wow.
So
That's true.
controlling to me is my ability to manage and influence what's going to happen next. It's not, I got to delete every urge and make sure that they never appear and they must go away because they're bad and they're annoying and I can't say no to them. It's like, well, I can have the urge, that urge can come up, then what? And that's where I think, the messages that we get, certainly, just say no doesn't do a lot of good, because then all of a sudden I'm at war with the urge. All of a sudden it's become a battle. And as soon as I think I'm at war with something, now it's got power.
It's so true. It's so
As
true.
As opposed to like, okay, of course the urge is here. Or even just, one of my first things really is just naming that you're having an urge. And when I introduce that to people, it's always like, what is this woman talking about? Like, you just want me to say, oh, I'm having an urge. And I think it's incredibly powerful and beneficial, because all of a sudden we're activating our higher brain. All of a sudden, we're not just on autopilot, we're narrating what's going on. Oh, this is an urge. Of course I'm having an urge. It's 5 o'clock. My brain learned this is what we do. We get a reward at 5 o'clock. Of course it's here. Because so often what happens with people is that the urge shows up, and when you want to change, right? If you're trying to say no, if you want to drink less, all of a sudden it's like, oh God, the urge is here. And now my anxiety has just kicked on too, because I wish it wasn't there and I wish it would go away. And I think that it's a sign that something is wrong with me, or my brain is broken, or whatever. And so like, can we just name it? Can we normalize it? Like, yeah, of course you're here. Of course, when I watch baseball, I'm having the urge for a beer, because at some point my brain learned this is what you do when you watch baseball.
What's so great about this is that whether you use the process that you've created and it leads you to becoming sober and living a sober life, it's still empowering you to understand the psychological drivers, so you understand and know yourself better. And that supports the work you're going to do if you are sober. Or if you go through all of this and where it leads you is to just a totally different relationship with alcohol that works for you, you still have to do the deeper work to understand what are the urges and psychological data that is driving you to try to answer the urge with a drink. That's really amazing.
Well, I think everything I'm teaching, yes, it's through the lens of alcohol and drinking and wanting to change that relationship. But to me, like, this is just a skill that we need across the board, right? Because we don't just have urges when it comes to a drink. We have urges around food. We have urges around spending money. We have urges to procrastinate. Like, we're always going to have competing desires, right? We always have this part of us that has the dream and the goal, and this is what I want to do, and this is how I want to spend my time. And we have the part of us that's like scrolling through TikTok, right? And looking for that easy way to distract ourselves or feel better or stay in our comfort zone. And so that's always going on. And I personally think that learning this work around my urges to drink is what kind of took my life to the next level, because it was like, oh, okay, now I can apply the skill to anything that I'm doing. It's not unique to just, saying no to a drink. It's not unique to alcohol. It's something that I can apply across the board.
It's an essential life skill.
Yes, and we don't teach people. Like, this is what's so frustrating for me, is we're constantly giving people messages, just say no, drink responsibly, enjoy in moderation, know when to say when. We're getting all these messages about what we should be doing, and nobody gives us the how. Nobody explains how we're supposed to do it. And so I think what happens is people start to internalize, this should just be something I can naturally do. I should instinctually know how to say no, be responsible, right? Know when to say when. And if I can't figure it out, oh, something must be wrong with me. As opposed to, no, people gave you a bunch of messages with no tools, no techniques, no understanding about the brain. I mean, that just, that really infuriates me.
I can tell. And I'm glad you got mad because you figured out how to help all of us. So I wanted to know. So we're at this, like, you name the urge, and it sounds like what do you mean by name the urge? So let's just take, for example, the second that we are done, I'm going to have, the second I'm done talking to you, it's going to be dinner time. I'm going to leave my podcast studio. I'm going to look out at a beautiful sunset, and I'm going to have an urge to make a margarita.
Yep.
So when you say name the urge, is just saying, did I just do that?
No, I'm like when it's happening.
Oh,
and
okay.
I love
it's happening right now because now I'm talking about it. But okay.
I love the sunset piece though, because like the number of people that I have coached on, like, how am I supposed to sit on my porch anymore and like enjoy a sunset? And it's like sunsets were enjoyable before you started drinking, right? We just, the brain started to associate, oh, I get a reward when I watch a sunset. So now when you take the reward away, it feels like something's missing from the sunset. Nothing's missing from the sunset, right? Okay,
you're right. Except for the drink.
Right. Except
I'm making a joke out of this, but I'm not really this cavalier about it, but I do feel like there's two camps here. It's poison. Nobody should ever drink. Drinking is a problem. I can already feel people who listen to the podcast who are sober, and it is a really powerful choice for them, who are sober, and it's extremely powerful for them being upset by this conversation. And so I just want to say something, and that is, this is a much deeper conversation than alcohol. And I want more people to listen to what you're saying than just people who think they have a problem with alcohol. Mm-hmm. I want every human being to listen to this conversation and feel like this applies to you, because it does. Because you're talking about the subconscious drivers that create your relationship to food, to alcohol, to money, to all of your behaviors, by the way. And alcohol is just one piece of this. And I'm going to keep on making jokes, because I think when I make a joke that now I'm thinking about the margarita, which is true, most people that have alcohol in their life actually operate that way. Mm-hmm. When you see the sunset, you're thinking about the drink you're going to have tonight. Yeah. And so now so when I leave here and I have the urge, I just, as I'm walking downstairs, I say, oh, I'm having that urge to make a drink.
Yeah. So you can say it to yourself. You can say it out loud. Both of it works. The idea is really just acknowledging what's going on. Like, oh, this is an urge. I'm having an urge right now. This is desire. Oh, how normal. Of course it's here. Right? This isn't a problem. This is what my brain learned. I mean, I think of the number of times that I would watch Mad Men and like immediately be like, I mean, I'm fixing a cocktail and smoking a cigarette right now, right? But there was I was kind of on autopilot, and I just didn't have that full awareness of what was going on, as opposed to like, oh, of course. This is desire. Of course I'm having an urge to fix a cocktail and smoke a cigarette right now, because I'm seeing it in front of me, and I'm seeing it presented in this very sophisticated, enjoyable way. So it really is just starting to narrate. I think that's a very, very powerful thing, to start to be able to narrate what your brain is doing, because all of a sudden you're not at the effect of your brain.
Right.
Part of you is watching it. And I will just add on the piece about like it's poison and it's terrible. I really caution people about that. I know that there are people who find that very effective. Mm-hmm. They go down the kind of rabbit hole of all the ways that it's harming you and it's bad for you. And I'm not denying that it can have negative consequences. But what I see happen to people, and I did this with myself as well, you start going down that rabbit hole of all the ways that it's harming you and all the, poisonous, toxic effects that it's having on your body, and you're still struggling to say no. or you're still drinking more than you want. And now you're waking up the next day and you're like doubly stupid because now you really should know better. So not only was it like, oh God, why did I have that like fourth glass? And I know all the harm that it's doing. And I know how bad it is
Yeah.
for me.
Yep.
And so there's already so much shame around drinking. There's already, people are so hard on themselves. It just becomes like another layer of, see, something really is wrong with me because now I know how bad it is. I know it's poisoning me. As opposed to like, listen, alcohol is just, it's a fact of being alive on this planet, right? It existed before humans learned how to harness the process of fermentation, right? So it's just part of being alive. So what if instead of fixating on it's so bad, right, the bad things that it's doing, I think that takes you away from this conversation that I think is more powerful, right? What does it represent? What is my desire really about? Why is it hard for me to say no? How do I feel when, I'm the odd man out, right? What are those emotions that come up for me? That is so much more powerful area, I think, to start to get curious about rather than all the bad things that it's doing.
Well, I agree with you. And even when you said the word name, that it's a desire. And when I gave that example of it's dinner time, the sun is setting, I'm going to make a cocktail. The truth is the desire is to stop working.
Mm-hmm.
The desire is to exhale and stop thinking for a minute. The desire is to reward myself for a job well done. And in naming that, it also takes my focus off the drink, and it helps me get present to what I actually want.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I do, actually, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but I have like a little picture of me as a 4-year-old looking very grumpy on my phone. It's like all around my house. I've got a big one over my office. I've got it on a couple of mirrors. But the reason why I have it is because it's much easier for me to connect to that younger version of myself and say, what does she need? Because so often my internal conversation is like, well, you're not supposed to need anything. Right? What are you complaining about? Right? You're an adult. But if I think about like, what is she needing right now? Right? When she's tired, when she's having desire, when she's frustrated, like what does she need in this moment? Is there's so much easier for me to answer that question on behalf of her rather than, 42-year-old Rachel, who you shouldn't need anything. And, you should be able to push through and you should be able to get more done and you have nothing to complain about. And you should be grateful for all these things that you have in your life. It's like, no, she has some needs and that's okay.
What immediately came to mind is I need a hug.
Yeah. But isn't that harder to ask for sometimes than a drink?
Well, you can't order one from a waiter. It's true. And I can make myself a drink, so I don't have to ask for anything, right?
Yeah.
But I can see that when you showed me that picture of yourself, and I think about myself, like what if I go to the 14-year-old me, that red Solo cup represented a hug and being welcomed into the group.
Yep.
And so I can see what you're saying, that there is a desire to name when you feel that urge that is deeper than the food or the drink or the pair of jeans you're about to buy, that goes way deeper. And that's what's driving it. And so, of course, you would want the thing. And of course, not giving yourself the jeans or the ice cream sundae or the Mai Tai feels like you're punishing yourself.
Yeah.
Wow. So once you kind of label this desire and you start working through it, what are some of the things that once you've labeled it, you need to do so that the urge or this desire doesn't continue to drive you, but you start to change your relationship to the desire or the urge that you're having?
Yeah. I think a big thing is just watching it pass. So that's a huge thing that a lot of people struggle with. It's like, listen, if I don't say yes, it's going to be nagging me all night long.
Can I confess something to you?
Of course.
Is it normal for someone to be worried that you're about to tell me not to have a drink tonight?
That I'm about to tell you?
Yes, that you're about to coach me through this process of noticing the urge, letting it rise and fall. And then at the end of this, I'm now going to have more conflict about the urge. And then you want to know how fucked up I am? Then I'm going to feel like this is now all evidence that I have an even bigger problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's how much of a shame cycle I'm in around this.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to argue that what the fuck is wrong with one goddamn drink? Why did you book Rachel on this show? See, like, I'm really torturing myself over. Is this normal? Is this what you see in the people you work with?
Yes, this is very normal. I'm not going to tell you anything to do when it comes. I mean, I think that's actually a huge piece of my approach is that I don't know what's best for you. I'm not going to tell you what to do because you're just going to be then looking to me or looking for someone outside of you to tell you what's right. I think you have wisdom and information inside of you. And that's not like a wink, wink, you shouldn't drink. I really do think that we have this ability to know what feels good for us and what feels like too much, but we can't access that if it's constantly in this place of like, oh God, I shouldn't even be wanting this, or I shouldn't even have this desire.
I love your approach because I can tell you that in my 20s, 30s, and early 40s, I definitely had a drinking problem. No question. No fucking question. Whether it was the lever I pulled to relieve anxiety, or it was escaping the shit show that my life had become when we were in financial trouble, or it was just a deep, I think, sadness and feeling lost and disconnected, and how alcohol can make you social and make you fun and make you forget all that stuff, and just sort of that constant cycle of drinking and then regretting that I drank and regretting what I said. And as I go deeper and I think about the person that I am now and the fact that, especially having a husband that doesn't drink, if he's not having a drink most nights, I don't have a drink. And I've wondered, especially given that I have a much healthier and balanced relationship with it, why the hell I am so conflicted. Why am I not proud of myself that I have gotten this to a point where it's not a problem, and it hasn't been a problem for a long time. And what I'm realizing is that it's so much deeper because it's about these desires and emotional needs that I've paired with alcohol.
Yeah.
And that I, at a fundamental level, make myself wrong for wanting things. And because I can't tolerate the desire riding up and not fulfilling it, like you reach for something. Because what's interesting? I bet if I were to do something, I bet if I were to just play the urge game, I would notice something. And I bet this is what I would notice. I bet that on the nights that I don't drink, just because I'm not going to have a drink alone and Chris isn't drinking or I don't feel like having one, I guarantee you, I probably buy something I don't need. Or I eat a big dessert. That I am probably so blind to the desire that comes up in me that I don't even realize I'm just substituting one thing for another.
Yeah, I got so much freedom out of that. I'm really understanding that I was so fixated on my drinking for so long, and then was like, wait a minute, maybe it actually has nothing to do with my drinking. Like maybe it's it's the way that I approach trying to fulfill my needs and meet my desires and deal with, negative emotion and give myself permission to have pleasure. And it was showing up in so many areas of my life, right? Like I didn't think more is better just with, a drink. I thought it was better with food. I thought it was better with stuff. I thought it was better with success. I thought it was better with, money. I thought it was better with praise. Like that was just kind of the overarching principle of how I was operating. And it wasn't just showing up for me in one place. And that, I think that created a lot of freedom for me because I walked around for a long time being like, I don't know, I've got like 8 different problems. Like, or not. Or maybe I have one thing that I'm working on, which is how to understand, like identify how I'm feeling and what I need and how to be okay with an unmet desire and how to fulfill it elsewhere.
That is incredible what you just said. That there is one supermax problem underneath it all. And it's your unmet emotional needs and how you are fulfilling them and your ability to tolerate those moments when your unmet emotional needs go unfulfilled like that. That you're exactly right.
It's just like such a relief was for me to be like, oh, it's just one thing. I'm just working on one thing.
How did you figure this out? Like, was there a particular moment? Like, did you have like a massive bender and then you're like, I can't drink again? And then you like reverse engineered this? Did you go to school for? How did you figure this out?
So I spent my 20s going like back and forth between I'm drinking, I'm not drinking, I'm drinking, I'm not drinking. But the not drinking was always, you were bad. You should be ashamed of yourself. Now it's time to punish yourself. We're just going to focus on saying no. And so I would say no and feel like something was wrong with me and I was missing out. And I, was very healthy, but wasn't enjoying myself as much. And then eventually I would, give in and go pick up right back where I left off. And so I was in this process, in this cycle for so long. And I think I had some awareness that it was bigger than the drink. I don't know how, but I think because I understood that I felt like I wasn't able to access a part of myself without the drink. I remember believing that like the fun Rachel, the real Rachel, like she comes out with a drink. And again, there was a part of me that was like, I don't think I always needed that. Right? Like we may have to go very far back in time, but there was a much younger version of myself who felt comfortable in her skin and wasn't so worried about what people thought and wasn't always trying to avoid making mistakes. Like that version of me existed at, maybe I was 3 or 4. I was very young, but I had that sense that she had been there and somehow I had lost her. And so I think it felt like, okay, I need to figure out a way to return to that. I need to figure out a way to get that back. And I will tell you the work of Brene Brown, I found incredibly powerful because she talks about numbing. She talks about like all of the things that we try to use. So she talks about like, remember this one paragraph where she's talking about like the chips and queso and the cigarettes and the beer and the, perfectionism and like all these things. And that I remember reading that being like, oh, that's me. That's what's going on. So, I started doing this work. I started learning about it. I decided I wanted to become a coach. And I mean, that's really how I got here. That's really kind of the journey that I was on. I think in part, I was very frustrated that we have such a limited, narrow conversation how we talk about this. It's kind of like, do I have a problem or don't I have a problem, right? Am I an alcoholic or am I a normal drinker? We're very black and white. And I think there are a lot of people that feel like they're in this kind of in between, and being in that in between can feel incredibly frustrating. And it's like, nobody understands my situation or what's going on for me.
Yeah. And because it's been framed as 2 extremes, that always makes you feel like one's bad, one's good. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's been really challenging to try to locate yourself. So when somebody comes to you and they say, I just want to figure out what a normal relationship with alcohol means for me, whether that means I never drink again, whether it means I have boundaries around it, whether it means I stop making myself wrong about it. What is the process you put somebody through, and how do we start it for ourselves?
Yeah. I think that one of the most important things to do is really first understand your mindset. And when I say mindset, I mean, when you think about, well, what are my reasons for drinking? And what do I make it mean that I struggle to say no? Right? What do I make it mean when I struggle to follow through on my commitment? What about the idea, even if this isn't where someone's going to land, but like if you think about being told that you couldn't drink again, what about that would be upsetting for you? Because when you start asking these questions, it's going to reveal some of your like big, overarching thoughts about yourself, your ability to change, your urges, alcohol, all of that.
Can we take some of them, and can you share some of the common things that you hear?
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, over and over again, the thought that people have that I also shared is like, I'm just an all or nothing person. I think I have an addictive personality. I think I'm just very compulsive with my behaviors. I also had I think my brain is missing an off switch. So when I ask people, well, what is the struggle about? It's always pointing to something kind of wrong with me, defective with my brain. Some part of me is not functioning correctly, as opposed to what I'm trying to help people see is like, what are the tools you need, right? Like, what are the skills that you need to be able not only to be curious about your urge, but also to allow yourself to have this unanswered desire and not make it into a problem or something terrible that we have to avoid. But yeah, I'm an all or nothing person. That's a pretty common one.
I also, like, as you were saying some of these questions, I was thinking, well, what does it mean? Like, because you asked one about what does it mean to have a drink?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I started thinking about all these situations like, well, it's celebratory. It is, like you're celebrating somebody. It's something you do in groups. It's a lot of fun. It's a way to bond with somebody else. It's a way to enjoy something. I have a lot of like, I don't want to miss out. Like if somebody opens up, like we were at a friend's house the other night and they opened up one of those super expensive French bottles of wine where you have to like push the gray dust off of it that had been gifted to them by somebody. And I'm like, ooh, I'm not going to miss out on that. Like I wasn't I hadn't had a drink that night, but the second they pulled that out, it's like the gene of FOMO. This is going to be expensive. I'm going to try this shit. And so when you think about excuses and the big question that you asked at the end, which is what was the big question? Because it made my heart go, oh God.
Oh, like if you couldn't drink again, right? If it was like, sorry, Mel, we're telling you, you can't drink for the rest of your life.
I would feel like I'd never have fun again.
Yeah.
Like I'd miss out on all the celebrations.
I mean, I was like, I'm sorry, how are we supposed to watch March Madness? Like, what? Am I ever going to have sex again? I don't understand. Like, what? Like, they were just so, I was like, are you kidding? So am I ever going to go to a wedding? Should I just not go to weddings anymore? I'm not going to have sex. We're not going to enjoy sports. Like, I guess I'm never going to dance, in public. I mean, there were just like so many things. I was like, well, you got to be kidding me. Like, you're literally talking about a miserable life. So yeah, no, thank you. I'll pass.
So what do you do if that's everything that you think? How do you handle the excuses? Because obviously none of that's true. That's just a story you're telling yourself. And part of your methodology is getting you to go deeper than the thing that you are reaching for, and getting to go deeper around these stories and these excuses that you have and understanding it. So when somebody fills all that out and they're like, okay, I'm never going to have sex. I'm not going to dance in public. I can't go to a sports game. My life will be no fun. All my friends who drink won't ever invite me out. I'm going to endure awkward moment after awkward moment where everybody else orders a drink. And I'm like, could I have a seltzer, please? Can I have the mocktail menu? And you feel like, all of that. And I don't want to miss out on all the fun. And I don't want to do, like, when you write out your excuses, that almost makes you feel like you would retreat toward binge drinking.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, we have nothing to look forward to, right?
Yes.
So one of the things I talk about in all those situations that I listed, like the worst thing that's going to happen is a feeling.
That's true.
So, but I don't think we understand it that way. We're like, no, the worst thing that's going to happen is my life is going to be over.
Yes.
So you start to be like, okay, so what is that feeling that comes up when I get on the dance floor, right? Totally sober. What is that feeling that I'm having when I'm sitting in the stands watching baseball and everybody has a beer and I don't? Right? Like, what is that feeling? Like, to start to identify the real issue here is not the drink. The real issue is this feeling that it's like, oh God, if this comes up, then there's nothing to do. Right?
Mm-hmm. What's interesting is I'm realizing that the more that you apply this to your life, the more that what you're doing is you're just teaching people how to handle the feelings that come with not reaching for what you normally reach for in that situation.
Yeah. I mean, it starts even just with like identifying what the feeling is, because that's a huge piece of what I had to do a lot of work on. Because I was like, first off, feelings are gross. Why are we talking about them? Ew. I'm not a touchy-feely person. So that was my like starting point. Can we just like, let's talk about something logical, not be in this like touchy-feely emotional stuff. But then, I was just like, I'm fine. I'm fine. Nothing's wrong. I'm fine. Like that. I didn't even really have the ability to articulate what was going on a lot of the time. That's a huge piece that I work on with people. It's like, okay, fine's not a feeling. Like, how are we actually feeling? So again, much like your urges, the ability to just name and notice and also not make it a problem. Like, I feel disappointed right now. How human of me. That's okay. We're supposed to feel disappointed sometimes. I can feel disappointed now because I'm not having the drink, or I can feel disappointed later because I didn't follow through on my commitment. But disappointments come in either way, so which one am I going to choose?
I'm reflecting on moments of my life in the last couple of years where I didn't drink. And, wouldn't have it, whether it's dry January or doing various challenges for a couple months. And everything that you're saying is exactly right, because I would have these urges come up from 5 to 7 at night. And the second that I got through that sort of the wave of feeling, and like I didn't feel like having a drink anymore. Mm-hmm. Because it wasn't about the drink. It was about the desire of feeling a boundary with work, or a desire to join in, or a desire to feel that liquid hug, or a desire to just be comforted. And it did pass. I guess what I want to make sure that anybody listening has is, if you're like me and I feel much calmer now. I feel like I understand what the work actually is. If I want to get curious about what would a relationship with or with alcohol really look like for me, that's very empowering. Mm-hmm. But for anybody listening, what is the place to start? Like, how do you even begin this inquiry if it doesn't involve not drinking for 30 days? Like, what do you recommend your clients do when somebody comes to you and they're as like spun around as I was when we started this conversation? Should I? Shouldn't I? I don't know. Is it poison? Is it this? Is there something wrong with me? Maybe there's something wrong with me. What's wrong with me? What is wrong with me? Why shouldn't I have one? Like, just where do you begin when you're in the middle of this very conflicted normal relationship with alcohol? which most people are in. I think most people live there.
Yeah, I agree. And I start people with really just starting to learn about urges, learn about the brain, right? Learn about, yeah, I've got a higher brain and I've got a lower brain and they've got different priorities, because this is a piece that most people just have no awareness of because we're not taught anything about it. And I think really just learning, like getting some basic information, that is the best place to start. It really is, because I think it does kind of like dial back the intensity of it, because it's like, oh, wait, so you're saying that an urge is normal and not a problem and doesn't mean that I have to wear a label for the rest of my life? And right, it's just like dialing that back can be really powerful. Understanding, oh, I have competing desires. This is normal.
Oh my God, I just got something. I just got something really powerful. Holy shit. I just realized the hidden frickin' superpower in what you're talking about, which is if you focus and become very curious about the desire that comes up, the urge that comes up, the emotion that's underneath it all, the kind of story that you tell yourself, you direct your attention to that exploration, which is so important, because here's what I'm realizing. Do you want to know why I always lose the battle with myself when I wake up in the morning and I say, I'm not having a drink tonight? Or I start a Sunday night and I say, I'm not going to drink this week. I'll just wait until next weekend. And then Monday rolls around, 6 o'clock. I go downstairs. It's the sunset. I feel the desire to pour a gin and tonic because this is my boundary between work. I now understand what it is. When I start to get in conflict with myself, Rachel, well, you said you weren't going to have a drink, but I feel like having a drink. What's wrong with having a drink? Well, you said you wouldn't, and that's a lack of I have a drink to shut that conflict down.
Yeah.
I'm not having a drink because I'm addicted to alcohol. I'm having a drink because I can't tolerate being in conflict with those two competing parts of me. Holy shit. That's why the drink habit always wins, because it shuts it down.
Then it's really like even less about alcohol, right? It's just like, how am I making it okay and normalizing conflict? Like internal conflict is okay.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. So you start by this inquiry, and you said you teach people about the higher and lower brain. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that, I thought the brain was just a lump. I was just like, it's a lump in my head, and I just, lost the brain lottery. That was kind of my assessment of my own brain. It was just like, I don't know, I just didn't get a very good one, or I got one that like always wants more. So obviously there are, I'm not an expert on the brain. There are many, many parts of the brain, but I think just understanding at a very basic level, we have a lower brain that is concerned with the immediate moment. It does not care about tomorrow. It does not care about the future. It cares about right now. And that's a good thing, actually, right? That lower brain is really helpful for survival, but it cares about right now. It cares about finding pleasure, avoiding pain. It wants to do things efficiently. It wants to save energy. Now, thankfully, we also have a higher brain. We have that prefrontal cortex. We have that ability, that part of ourselves that can think about tomorrow and our goals and our dreams and our future. And it can weigh pros and cons, and it can get curious and ask questions. Like, we have both parts of the brain, and that's actually an amazing thing. If we start to understand, hey, how am I going to manage this lower brain? So, I also talk about it like the toddler. Like, how are you going to manage when the toddler is freaking out? The toddler, right? Like, like watch my own children. It's like they want what they want when they want it. And trying to have like an intellectual conversation with them about why they shouldn't really want it. And this is not how we behave. Like, you're not going to get anywhere, as opposed to, okay, I have this higher brain. I have this adult brain. What am I going to do in this situation to navigate the tantrum that is actually going to be useful. Giving in, probably not so useful, because then what does the toddler learn? It's like, oh, this is how I get my way. This is a good thing.
So the higher brain is the one that you're using to tolerate the urge.
Yeah.
And to ride the wave. And the lower brain is the one that is going, oh, sunset, desire boundary equals gin and
this is what we
tonic.
want.
Yeah, this is what I want.
You've taught me when we watch the sunset, I get a drink. This is what we do, right? I remembered. See? I reminded you. I saw a sunset and I was like, drink. Like lower brain is doing its job.
Oh my God. That's so helpful.
Because it's like I think we all really understand, like we're not going to have like an intellectual conversation with the toddler.
No, you're basically going to go, I understand that you're upset and that feeling or desire is value. But that feeling or desire is true.
Yep.
And that's not what we're doing right now.
That's not what we're doing. And I know this is hard, and I'm going to be here with you, and I'm going to stay by your side. You're not in trouble. You're not doing anything wrong, but I'm going to help you see yourself through to the other side. And you know what? It still will probably be a little uncomfortable, but so much less uncomfortable than like, why are you throwing a tantrum? You're not supposed to be having a tantrum right now.
Is there any, I know you don't tell people what to do, but is there any prescribed method? Like when a client that you're working with says, okay, I want to try to tolerate the urges. I want to try to notice when the lower and the upper brain are in conflict and rely on the upper brain to get me through this moment where I'm going to go to a baseball game and I'm not going to order a beer. Is there anything that you tell people to do? Like for 5 days, don't have a drink, or, or do you talk about specific scenarios? Like how do you get somebody to really start practicing this? Because I can also see how this, if you've been in conflict for a long time, this could become one of those things where you think about it a lot, but you don't actually try it.
Right. So I think that the process always starts with, we got to learn something. We got to learn about how the brain works. We got to learn some of these tools. I have people take a 30-day break from drinking.
Okay.
And I believe it's very different than kind of like a dry January or a sober October, because what I'm always telling people is the 30 days, I want you to focus on using the tools. Yes, we are using the tools to say no, but I want you to focus on like, this is me going all in on trying out all these techniques, all the techniques to manage my urges, all the techniques to talk back to my excuses. I'm going to be using these tools and I'm going to be discovering some work better than others, right? So I always have to be in this place of assessing and adjusting. Did that work? Did that not work? I think a lot of times what happens, dry January, there can be a lot of benefits, but the point is making it 30 days. And I'm like, listen, we're doing these 30 days it doesn't matter if you drink on day number 2. That's good data, right? That means something didn't work. Let's look at what didn't work. Let's examine that and let's figure out what we need to do to prepare. Now, I will tell you, that's a huge mindset shift for people, because a lot of people, they say I'm all or nothing when it comes to drinking. I actually think they're all or nothing about commitment, right? It's kind of like I either was committed and I did it right and gold star, or I broke my commitment and now it's like, okay, why bother, right? I made a mistake, so now I get to have as much as I want. And it's kind of like learning how to change means developing a different relationship with commitment. Like, okay, yesterday.
Wait, say that again.
Learning how to change means developing a different relationship with commitment. You can't have an all or nothing relationship with commitment. It can't be, I was good, I was committed, and I followed through and I was good, or I broke my commitment and I was bad. So, that mindset, you're screwed.
So what do you do with that person who says, okay, we're going to do the 30 days of not drinking and I'm going to try the tools. And day 8 rolls around and it's a beautiful sunset. Or it's a
Yeah.
really bad day at work. Or you get really, really horrible news. The last time I wasn't drinking, I got news that a friend of ours died.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, fuck this shit. I'm having a cocktail. So if I were doing the 30 days with you, what is the data? Like, what can I learn from that day where I didn't keep my commitment to myself?
Yeah. Okay. So there's a process, right, that I have people go through to actually look back and understand what was happening in the moment, right? Like when you were saying, fuck this shit, what was going on? What were you saying, fuck this shit to?
Life being hard, commitment being hard, sticking to my 30-day promise being hard. Probably if I go a little, that's at the surface. If I go a little bit deeper, it was being really pissed off and really sad that my friend had died
Mm-hmm.
and wanting to just like numb it out, like not have to feel anything, and sticking to a commitment or a new or changing, like developing those new neural paths. That's hard work. And so I did not want to have to work hard at like sticking to a promise when all I wanted to do was fucking have a drink and lay down on the couch and cry about my friend.
Yeah. I mean, so all of a sudden we get to see it like through the lens of like, oh, it was sadness. It was grief. It was the belief that like this emotion is too big. It's too much. I can't handle it. I don't want to be with it. I shouldn't have to be with it, which also so normal.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, of course your brain went to the thing that it's like, I know how we get out. Like, I know the shortcut. Here's the shortcut to not have to feel our emotions. We have the drink.
That's the lower brain, right?
Yep.
That's the lower brain going, I recognize this pattern.
Right. And so all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, this wasn't me breaking my commitment and being bad. This was me in the moment of having all of this pain and sadness bubble up, not feeling like I had an alternative for how to manage it or handle it.
How does recognizing that help you have a stronger muscle when it comes to commitment?
Well,
because you're right, because I'm sitting here going, I totally agree with you. All or nothing when it comes to commitment. You're either good or you're bad. You either have integrity or you don't. You either stick to your promises or you're a fuck up and you never will. Like, like that kind of thinking. And if I take on a 30-day challenge and I fuck it up on day 12, then I fucked up the whole thing.
Right. But remember, what did I say the goal of the challenge was?
It's not to not drink for 30 days?
No, I know. It's like,
isn't it to not
like,
drink
it's
for
not drinking, right? We said not drinking. It's not drinking.
The goal was to use the tools.
Use the tools.
But I didn't lose the tools, so I actually didn't do the challenge. See how quick I am to like go bad, Mel.
Okay, so now we don't. So like this happens on day 2. So day 3, we can't go back to using the tools.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. And we just make progress so much faster, right? When we're not, it's kind of like, oh, well, I tried and that didn't work. Now it was bad. Now I'm going to go into a shame spiral. And I'm either just going to like stop trying, right? Because it's like, see, nothing works. Right. And I'm just going to like give up. Or like, I would either go into the like, okay, nothing works. Let's just like F it. I just have permission to like drink and eat and like do all the things that I want to do. Or I would go into the place of like, okay, now we're going to make like this super crazy restrictive rule because I was so bad, but like deep down, I know I can't follow it at all.
People do that on diets nonstop.
Yeah.
I see such a direct parallel with the way we are all around eating.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to my breakthrough just a couple minutes ago, because I'm starting to see that if you take on a 30-day challenge like this to use the tools and to use the tools to not drink for 30 days as a way to learn and develop the muscle of commitment and understanding yourself better. If you screw up on day 2 or 12 or 28, and then you bash yourself for not having a perfect streak the likelihood is I would then just bail on the challenge altogether because the amount of shame I would throw at myself and the conflict I would feel would be so much that I'd want to turn it off by having a drink.
Yeah. Except what if it wasn't a screw up? Like, what if you didn't make a mistake? And I don't mean, I mean, like, what if the decision to say yes to the drink wasn't a mistake? It wasn't a screw up.
Well, how could it not be if I am making a commitment?
Because maybe it's trying to give you insight into something that you are missing, like a skill that you don't have, or a response that you don't have to an excuse, or something that you're, like you're not aware of. Like maybe you don't have the awareness, so I'm using it as a boundary. And maybe it's that moment where you're like, okay, I tried and then it didn't work and I said yes. And then when you go back and look, it's like, oh, like we can't get awareness just by being perfect. I think that's the misconception.
Ooh. You're right, you can't. And I just had another insight. The more I talk to you, the deeper we're going. Here's my big insight. I don't know if we have enough time to talk about this one. I realized that I hate being told what to do.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Even by myself. Like it's like this rebel thing. You're not going to tell me what to do. Even if I said I want to do this thing, I'm not going to do that thing that I said that I would do. I'll show you. Is that a normal thing that you hear with people?
Yes, this is a huge thing. I often talk to people when they're really struggling. It's like, okay, so what is the language that you're using to say no to the drink? And they're like, well, I'm just saying that I can't have a drink. Okay, when you tell yourself you can't have a drink, how does that make you feel? Pissed off.
Yes.
Yeah, because here's the thing. It's not even true that you can't have a drink.
Explain that.
You're like, but we said we can't. Well, I mean, you're an adult woman. We're living in a country where alcohol is accessible. You have money, arguably, like you have an app. Maybe it will deliver. You have a car. Like, of course you can drink. You're choosing to say no. Like there's such a, like, this is, probably because my father was an English teacher. And so he's always like hounding the importance of words.
Yeah.
But there's such a big difference between like when I tell myself I can't have something versus, okay, I'm choosing not to, and here's why. It still might feel a little uncomfortable for me, but I'm not pissed. I'm not seeking to rebel.
How do you get somebody to have a big enough why for doing this process?
Well, what do you mean when you say a big enough why?
Well, if somebody's already conflicted about whether or not they want to stop drinking or whether or not they want to change their relationship with drinking, and I already see my anger is going to come up, my rebel nature is going to come up, my toddler tantrum throwing bullshit's going to come up, my concern that I can't make the streak is going to come up, and that's going to reveal that I have a huge problem. And yet I still feel drawn to want to take this on.
Mm-hmm.
You know what it is? I literally am worried I can't do it.
But what's the thing you're worried that you can't do?
Like stick to not drinking for 30 days, even though I've done it before.
And even though I told you didn't have to do it. Like, that was not the point.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I think
I'm trying to figure out how to do this right. And I'm trying to get to the right
just so
answer.
you won't be mean to yourself. I mean, this is all you're doing, right? You're like, oh, I'm just trying to avoid being an asshole to myself.
Yes.
If you just knew that you weren't going to be mean to yourself, if there wasn't the threat of, okay, when you screw up, right, we're going to like beat you up and say all the nasty, mean things.
I don't know. I've never tried life like that.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to try the 30 days.
But it's like that when people are like, I don't want to try,
Not
like I can't
today.
handle.
Not today. I'm going on a beach vacation. I want to reserving the right to watch a sunset. But no, I want to. I'm like really interested in this because I'm tired of the conflict
Yeah.
within me, and I think there's peace that's accessible in this, and it is very freeing for somebody like me, and I think for a large number of you listening to go, oh, wait a minute, I don't have to choose between I drink all the time and I don't drink at all.
Mm-hmm.
I can end the internal conflict that I feel, and I can learn more about urges and desires and tolerating things and operate from my higher brain instead of letting my lower brain control me. And I can get myself out of this cycle of shame and management and conflict and all this shit by simply trying what you're saying for 30 days of using these tools.
Yeah.
And naming the desire and tolerating the desire and watching your excuses and going a layer deeper. And how do we get information on how to do this?
So you can go to rachelhart.com, my
Yep.
website, and
We're going to link
check
to
it
all
out
this.
there.
Yep.
Yeah, I just want to add, I will say that so much of this is just changing your relationship with yourself, right? Because if you knew that you weren't going to be mean to yourself when you weren't perfect, you'd be so much more willing to try it, right? You'd be so much more willing to say, I'm going to do this thing because I'm not going to make it mean that something's wrong with me or I'm broken or see, I really have a problem or I knew I couldn't do it. And that's the thing that I think so often we're actually struggling with is how we talk to ourselves in the moment that we go with the lower brain, as opposed to like, oh, how normal. I don't have to make it mean that I'm broken or something's wrong with me or I'm a bad person.
I also see for myself that I have a story that it's going to be painful.
Mm-hmm.
And why would I? This is the story, by the way. It's probably coming from the lower brain. I have this story that it's going to be really hard. It's going to be really painful. I'm not going to have the fun. Like, my work is already like all consuming, and I'm going to be missing out on something. And the fact is that I'm missing out on peace with myself and being kind to myself. It's already really hard because I ride this conflict wave within me all the time. And I just silence that shit by having a cocktail and ending the fight. And I'm afraid of the desire and the urge and needing to tolerate that for 2 hours during the window that I normally fix myself a drink on the nights I'm drinking.
I mean, I think this goes back to what you were saying about the big why.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it can be all about, improving my physical health. Yes, there are benefits there, but it's like, what's the point of doing this work? What's the point of having a peaceful relationship, with alcohol? Or what's the point of having more authority over my urges? Like, why am I practicing these skills? Who do I want to become? Right? So it's moving towards something that I think, because anything we do, anytime we grow, anytime we build a muscle, it's going to be uncomfortable at first. That's normal. But if it feels like, wah, wah, like I'm just, okay, so I get to be healthier. I had a client once say, when I was working with her on her compelling reasons, I had her say, I just want to be the captain of my own soul. And I was like, yeah.
What are the compelling reasons?
So the compelling reasons are kind of like, can you kind of write down, can you look at, different aspects of your life, whether it's your health or your emotional well-being or your relationships. Maybe it's your career or your goals or your faith or money, time, productivity, to like look at all of these areas of your life and start to ask yourself, why would it be worth it for me to change my relationship with alcohol? How would these areas of my life benefit? And I think it's kind of going a little bit beyond like, I don't know, I mean, my liver would get a break and maybe I wouldn't
better.
wake up regretful.
Yeah. My hot flashes wouldn't be so bad. I love the captain of the soul. That really spoke to me because I am somebody who is uber intentional and uber in control and have done so much work on myself as a leader and as a mom and as a wife and as a human and improving my relationship with myself. And I feel like the one area where I have this friction between old and new is this conflict I feel around whether or not I'm going to have a cocktail. And you have been so profoundly helpful because I have realized a couple very liberating things. And I realize I'm about to say something very controversial, particularly for those of you who are sober. But I really profoundly believe I do not have an issue with alcohol after talking with you. I really do. I believe I have a major issue with the desire that's driven by a boundary between work and relaxing and turning my brain off, and the desire to join in and belong with others in moments of celebration, and being able to do a change and neuropathway and habit exercise where I examine this lovingly through these deeper desires. They're all tied up with alcohol for some dumb reason. I think it would give me more of a sense that I'm driving the ship in all areas of my life, because this is kind of the one where I feel like, why can't I, like, what the fuck is this about? And I've been focused on the alcohol and the black or white, not the much richer and deeper opportunity of knowing myself in the way that you are helping people around the world who come to you and work with you around their urges and their relationship to their desires and alcohol specifically. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And thank you for being here. Thank you so much. I could feel your arm around me as we were having this conversation, and now I want to put my arm around you. I want to make sure to tell you that I love you and I believe in you, and I believe in your ability to create a better life for yourself, however you define that, whatever that means for you. And what that means for me is I am going to try this 30-day thing. So thank you for being here and helping me find the courage to take a look at this, because it's a hell of a lot easier to face your stuff and change together. All right, I'll talk to you in a few days. Okay, squeeze into this. Oh, wow. Wow, this is like Tool City, man. Tool City. Okay. Oh, shit. Jesus, my kids always call while we're having a podcast. Goodbye. Okay. Mama's out to talk about drink. That's a boundary, okay? I'm still on the clock.
Excuse me. Let me take a sip.
So is that straight vodka in that thing that you just had a drink of?
Oh, yeah, this is, yeah, sure. Totally.
Oh, and one more thing. And no, this is not a blooper. This is the legal language. You know, what the lawyers write and what I need to read to you. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. I'm just your friend. I am not a licensed therapist, and this podcast is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. Got it? Good. I'll see you in the next episode. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe, because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you, so make sure you subscribe. Mwah.